She walked into the wedding like a shadow, just a single mother with her little girl, hoping to steal one moment of beauty from a world that rarely offered any. But what began as a quiet dream turned into public humiliation when they were thrown out in front of dozens of guests. Just when everything seemed lost, a mysterious man stepped forward, and what he said left the entire room silent. Who was he? And why did he risk everything for strangers? If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The church glowed with soft golden light as the evening sun filtered through stained glass windows, coloring the marble floor in warm shades of red and gold. Inside, everything looked perfect. Music floated through the air, flowers lined every pew, and guests dressed in fine clothes smiled as they turned to watch the bride walk slowly down the aisle. At the very back of the church, near the last bench, a woman sat quietly with her daughter. Her name was Hannah. She wore a simple blue dress that had been ironed carefully the night before. Her long hair was tied back with a ribbon that had seen better days. Beside her, holding her hand tightly, was her 6-year-old daughter, Lily. The little girl wore a white dress 2 sizes too big, but her eyes sparkled with wonder. "Look, Mommy," Lily whispered, leaning close. "She looks like a princess." "She does," Hannah replied softly, smiling, though her eyes looked tired. "One day, if you want to, you can wear a dress like that too." Lily smiled and nodded, her curls bouncing. They were not invited to this wedding. They had slipped in quietly, hoping only to see something beautiful. Hannah had always promised Lily magic, even if they couldn't afford it. The ceremony went on. The couple exchanged vows, kissed, and the crowd clapped. Hannah and Lily remained seated, unnoticed, watching with quiet joy. When the guests began leaving, Hannah stood and looked at her daughter. "Do you want a quick picture by the flowers? Just one? To remember?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Please." They tiptoed down the aisle together. The church was nearly empty now. The altar was covered in roses, and light still poured through the tall windows. Hannah knelt next to Lily and lifted her phone. "Smile, baby." She was about to take the photo when a sharp voice cut through the silence. "Excuse me, just what do you think you're doing?" Hannah froze. She turned slowly. A tall woman in a green silk gown stood behind them. Diamonds glittered around her neck and her eyebrows were raised in disgust. "You," the woman pointed. "Who let you in here? This is a private wedding, not a tourist stop." "I'm sorry," Hannah said quickly, standing. She wanted to see the flowers. We weren't trying to hurt anyone." "You weren't invited," the woman snapped. "People like you don't belong here. This is a celebration, not a charity shelter." Lily stepped back, clutching her mother's skirt. "Mommy," she whispered, "are we bad?" Hannah's heart cracked, but her voice caught in her throat. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. "You're setting a terrible example," the woman continued coldly. "Dragging your child into places where she clearly doesn't belong. You should be ashamed." Guests nearby turned their heads, watching. Whispers started. No one spoke up. And then, from the shadows, a quiet voice said, "That's enough." The words were calm, but powerful. Everyone turned to see a tall man step forward from one of the middle pews. He wore a simple black suit. His dark hair was slightly messy, and his expression unreadable. His name was Jonas Hale, though most there knew only of him. One of the city's youngest millionaires, known for his silence and success. He walked forward slowly, his eyes locked on the woman in green. "Who told you she had no place here?" he asked. The woman frowned, confused. I don't understand." "Who told you she was alone?" he said again, louder this time. Silence filled the church. Jonas turned to Hannah, then to Lily. "From this moment forward," he said, "they're not alone. They're with me." Gasps broke out. The woman in green looked like she might faint. Jonas stepped beside Hannah. Without a word, he took off his jacket and placed it gently around her shoulders. Then he knelt down and looked at Lily. Not bad, he said softly. You're braver than most people in this room. He pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the tears from Lily's cheeks. She blinked at him, unsure, then leaned in. Jonas lifted her gently in his arms. Hannah stared at him, her voice low. Why are you doing this? He looked her in the eye. Because no child should feel unwanted, and no mother should be shamed for loving her daughter. Then he turned and walked slowly down the aisle, holding Lily, guiding Hannah beside him. No one stopped them. No one dared. Outside, the sun had dropped lower, casting long shadows across the gravel parking lot. Hannah stood, still in shock. Jonas stood a few steps away, watching quietly. She turned to face him. I don't even know your name. He smiled, faintly. Jonas Hale. Hannah nodded once. Thank you. He didn't say anything more, just nodded back and walked toward a black car waiting by the gate. And just like that, the wedding was over. But something much more powerful had just begun. 2 days had passed since the wedding. Hannah still wasn't sure if what happened inside that church had been real. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind, how Jonas Hale had stepped in, defended her, and walked her and Lily out with the entire room watching in silence. No one had ever stood up for her like that. So when she received a phone call the next morning and heard Jonas's calm voice on the other end, her heart skipped. Hannah, he said gently, I know yesterday was unexpected, but if you're open to it, I'd like to offer you something. She hesitated. What kind of something? I run charity events. I have one coming up next weekend at my estate outside the city. I need someone with heart and good instincts to help manage the event. She paused, unsure. And Lily? Of course she can come, he said without a pause. There's a garden, space for her to play. You won't be alone. She wanted to say no. She didn't like taking help. But rent was due, her job at the diner was cutting shifts, and Lily needed more than peanut butter sandwiches. All right, she said at last. We'll come. Jonas's estate was nothing like she imagined. When the car dropped them off, Hannah stood frozen at the gates, Lily's hand in hers. The house wasn't loud or flashy. It was beautiful, quiet, and surrounded by trees and flowers in full bloom. The garden behind the house looked like something from a dream. Stone pathways, fountains, and benches under willow trees. Jonas met them at the door, dressed simply in a gray sweater and jeans. He looked nothing like the powerful man from the wedding. I'm glad you came, he said, smiling at Lily. She tilted her head. You're Mr. Kind. Jonas laughed softly. That's a new one. Inside, Hannah was shown to a guest room, while Jonas introduced Lily to the garden. Later that afternoon, as Hannah helped the team organize place cards and flower arrangements for the fundraiser, she looked out the window and saw Jonas walking beside Lily. She was holding a sketch pad, talking excitedly. That evening, Jonas sat on the porch reading a children's book aloud. Lily, now in pajamas, curled up on the swing next to him, listening closely. You didn't have to do that, Hannah said quietly, stepping outside. Jonas looked up. I don't mind. She asked for it. She doesn't usually warm up to people that fast. Maybe she sees something in me, he said, then added, kids feel things adults miss. The next few days passed gently. Every morning, Hannah worked with Jonas's staff, checking details and planning schedules. Every afternoon, Lily explored the garden, her sketch pad never far from reach. She drew flowers, birds, and often, Jonas. Always, standing next to her mother with little hearts floating above their heads. One day, Lily handed Jonas a drawing. This is you and me and Mommy. We're the garden team. He smiled and pinned it to the fridge. Small things started to feel easy. Jonas made sure breakfast was ready before Hannah came downstairs. He remembered how she liked her tea, light, no sugar. He helped Lily tie her shoes, bandaged her scraped knee without blinking, and never once made Hannah feel like a guest out of pity. He noticed things, like how Hannah hummed when she was nervous, or how she touched her necklace when deep in thought. And she noticed things too, like the way he always walked on the outside of the sidewalk, kept a shawl near the garden bench for chilly afternoons, or how he bent down when talking to Lily, so he was always at her eye level. One afternoon, Hannah watched from the porch as Jonas helped Lily plant flowers near the fountain. "Why are you helping?" she asked him later as they sat under a tree. He looked at her carefully. "Because I like being useful." "You don't need to prove anything," she said gently. "Maybe," he said. "But I've never had a reason to stay still before." She was quiet. Jonas took a breath. "There's something about the way you protect her, the way you speak to her. It makes me want to protect you both." "We're used to being on our own," she replied. "That doesn't mean you have to stay that way." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Hannah wandered into the kitchen and found Jonas quietly pinning another one of Lily's drawings on the fridge. "You're collecting them," she said with a small smile. "They matter," he replied. "Even the ones where you're just a stick figure?" "Especially those," he said. They both laughed. It was soft and real. Then silence. Jonas looked at her. "I hope you know," he said slowly. "You don't owe me anything for being here." Hannah's smile faded, but not from sadness. "I know," she said, "but thank you for making us feel like we're not a burden." Jonas reached into the fruit bowl and handed her an apple. "You're not. You never were." As the night deepened, Hannah sat on the porch alone, the apple in her hand, and looked up at the stars. Something inside her was changing. She didn't know if it was safety or hope or the simple joy of someone finally seeing her and Lily not as problems, but as people worth knowing. And for the first time, in a long time, she didn't feel like running. The night of the fundraiser was filled with laughter, lights, and soft music. Hannah moved through the crowd, checking on last-minute details, greeting guests, and making sure everything went smoothly. She had never been part of something so grand before, but somehow it all felt natural, like she belonged. Lily wore a pale yellow dress and stayed close to Jonas, handing out flowers to guests and making them smile. She had even drawn a sign that said, "Welcome to our garden party," which Jonas had proudly placed near the entrance. As the evening came to a close, and guests began leaving, the estate slowly quieted down. The garden light still glowed, the fountain gently bubbled, and the night air grew cooler. Hannah found Jonas standing near the back porch, looking out over the lawn, a glass of water in his hand. "You throw beautiful parties," she said, stepping beside him. "You made it beautiful," he replied without looking away. They stood in silence for a moment, the quiet stretching between them. Then Hannah spoke, her voice low. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" Jonas turned to her, surprised by the softness in her tone. "Of course." She took a deep breath. "Years ago, when I was 21, I worked as a hotel cleaner upstate. One night there was a summer party, music, dancing. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was invited by one of the staff." Jonas listened carefully, not saying a word. "There was a man," she continued. "He was kind, not pushy. We talked, danced, shared a bottle of soda under the stars. He only gave me a first, Dembadju. The next morning he was gone." Her voice shook slightly. "A few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I never saw him again. I didn't even try. I didn't want him to think I was looking for anything. I just raised Lily the best I could." Jonas's grip on the glass tightened. He remembered that summer. He had been at a resort for a friend's event. One night he met a girl in a faded green dress. Her laugh had been quiet but warm. They'd talked until sunrise. He had written his initial, just J, on a napkin and left it on her bedside table. He hadn't remembered her name. But now, standing beside her again, he knew. It was her. Hannah and Lily. Lily, with his same crooked smile, his same way of tilting her head when thinking. He swallowed hard. "I think I was there," he said slowly. Hannah blinked. "What?" "That party. I remember it now. The green dress?" The girl who said the stars were her favorite part of the sky. She stared at him. "You're serious?" He nodded, but he didn't say more. Not then. Because inside, something was rising fast. A fear, a truth he had not expected. Later that night, while Hannah slept in the guest room, Jonas sat at his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Inside were a few strands of Lily's hair, collected gently from her brush. He knew what he was doing was bold. Maybe even wrong, but he needed answers. He sent the envelope to a private lab with strict instructions. Confidential, urgent. 3 days passed. The results arrived by courier, sealed and official. Jonas sat at his office desk, staring at the paper. He didn't open it right away. His hands trembled slightly. The house was quiet. Outside, Lily was chasing butterflies. Hannah was making tea in the kitchen. Finally, he unfolded the paper. Percent probability. Biological paternity confirmed. Lily was his daughter. His breath caught. He leaned back in his chair, heart racing. A storm of emotion hit him all at once. Joy, fear, regret, hope. He remembered how Lily had called him Mr. Kind. He remembered the way she'd climbed into his lap without hesitation, the way she smiled when he read to her, the way she tucked her tiny hand into his like it belonged there. It did belong there. She was his. He stood and walked to Lily's room. She wasn't there, but her sketchpad was. He flipped through it. One page showed 3 figures: a tall man, a little girl, and a woman with long hair. They were standing under a tree. Hearts floated above their heads. The words beneath read, "Our real family." Jonas closed the pad gently. He had the truth now. But he didn't tell Hannah. Not yet. He needed her to know something first. That he hadn't stayed because of blood. He had stayed because he loved them both. That night he read to Lily as usual. She snuggled against his side and closed her eyes. "You make the best bedtime voice," she murmured sleepily. Jonas smiled, brushing her hair back. "Good night, little one." Then, as she drifted off, he whispered so quietly even the night barely heard, "I'm your dad." He stayed beside her long after she was asleep, watching her breathe, feeling something in his chest shift forever. In the quiet of that moment, Jonas made a promise to love her, protect her, and never disappear again. And deep down, he knew the hardest part was still to come. The truth was here. Now, he had to face it. The morning after the fundraiser, the world was calm, but Jonas Hale was not. He stood at the kitchen window watching the garden. Dew sparkled on the grass and birds sang softly in the trees. Inside, everything looked the same, but everything had changed. Lily was his daughter. He had the DNA report locked away in his desk. A few lines on paper had confirmed what his heart had already whispered. But now came the question that frightened him most. Would the truth break what they had built? Hannah walked into the room, holding 2 mugs of tea. She handed one to him and sat across the table. Her eyes were tired but kind. "You didn't sleep either, did you?" she asked. He shook his head. "Me neither," she said. "Too many thoughts." There was a long pause. Then Hannah looked at him with searching eyes. "Jonas, is there something you haven't told me?" His heart thudded. He had promised himself. He wouldn't hide behind silence anymore. He took a deep breath. "Yes," he said, steadying his voice. "There is." She froze. Her hands tightened around the mug. He looked into her eyes. "Lily, she's my daughter." Silence fell over the room like a sudden storm. Hannah stared at him, unmoving. "What?" she whispered. He explained it all. How he had remembered that summer night. How the pieces began to fit. How he had taken the test. How he had waited. She didn't interrupt. She just sat there as the truth unfolded like pages of a book she wasn't ready to read. "And all this time?" she finally said, voice shaking. "You knew, and you said nothing?" I didn't want you to think I stayed because of duty, he said softly. I stayed because I love her, and I love you. Her eyes welled up. You should have told me. I know, he replied. I was afraid I'd lose the one thing I never knew I needed. She stood and walked to the window silent. He didn't follow. He let her feel the weight of it. After a long moment, she turned around. You're not just some man who helped us anymore, she said. You're her father. This changes everything. Jonas nodded slowly. I know, but it doesn't change how I feel. Not about her, not about you. You gave us safety, she said, and now I don't know what was real. He stepped closer gently. It was all real. Every smile, every bedtime story, every quiet cup of tea. I didn't need a test to love her, but the test reminded me I was meant to. She looked at him, her eyes softer now. What do we do now? She asked. Whatever you want, he replied. I'll follow your lead. The next morning, the house was quiet, but Jonas knew something was wrong. Hannah and Lily were gone. No goodbye note, no message, just one thing left behind. A folded piece of paper on the kitchen table. A drawing by Lily, 3 stick figures holding hands, hearts above their heads, the words "My real family" written in block letters. Jonas sat with that paper for hours. He didn't chase them, but he didn't stay silent either. 1 week later, Jonas stood before a crowd of reporters at the Hale Foundation headquarters. Cameras flashed, voices murmured, and tension filled the room. He stepped up to the podium and spoke, not as a businessman, but as a man with nothing left to hide. There's a little girl out there named Lily, he said clearly. She is my daughter. I didn't know for most of her life, but when I found out, I felt something I've never felt before. Home. The crowd stilled. I didn't fall in love with her or her mother because of a test. I loved them long before I knew the truth. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. He paused. They are my family, and I will never stop trying to be worthy of that. Across town, in a small apartment, Hannah sat on a worn couch. The television played softly. Lily lay curled next to her asleep. On screen, Jonas's face appeared. He looked tired but honest. His voice filled the room. Hannah watched, tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't need a script or flowers or a promise. She just needed truth, and now she had it. 3 days later, on Lily's 7th birthday, a black car pulled up to the gates of Jonas's estate. Hannah stepped out first, dressed simply. She held Lily's hand. The front doors opened. Jonas stood there. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just looked at them like someone waking from a dream. Then Lily let go of her mother's hand and ran. Daddy. He caught her in his arms, holding her close, eyes wet with tears. He looked at Hannah over her shoulder. She nodded once. Forgiveness had found its way home. That evening, the garden sparkled with lights. Children played. Music drifted in the air. A chocolate cake sat on the table with Lily's name written in blue icing. Hannah stood near the koi pond watching Lily laugh. Jonas walked up behind her and gently placed a hand on her back. She's happy, he said. She's home, Hannah replied. He turned to her and dropped to one knee. There was no ring, only her hand in his. I don't need a stage or a perfect plan, he said. I just need you. Will you be my home? She laughed through tears. Yes. Lily ran over, giggling. Kiss her, Daddy. Jonas pulled Hannah close and kissed her, soft and sure. The moment was not about grandness. It was about truth. Because love, they had learned, didn't need to be perfect. It only needed to stay, and now, finally it had.